A very good morning and a very warm welcome to today's class. Today we are going to see international relations. International relations as a subject for UPSC, it's very important. One, because you being the future diplomats will handle the foreign relations of India. And as a matter of, understanding the role of India in the world, it's very, very important to understand. To some extent, the global politics and the domestic politics and our domestic economic and political reforms are interrelated. ஸோ நம்ம கண்ட்ரியில் நடக்கிற நிறைய விஷயங்களை நீங்கள் இன்னும் தெளிவாக புரிஞ்சுக்கிறதுக்கு யூ நீட் டு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் வாட் இஸ் happening globally and how India is having relationship with its neighbors. So knowing all these things will make your understanding better, and that will help you um, in understanding everything around you. Okay, because everything, for instance, let's say our oil prices. So in order to understand the fluctuation in oil prices and like நம்மளோட கரண்ட் அக்கவுண்ட் டெபிசிட் பிஓபி இது எல்லாத்த பத்தியும் அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பண்றதுக்கு தெர் இஸ் எக்ஸ்டர்னல் மார்க்கெட், ரைட்? ஸோ நம்மளோட க்ரூட் ஆயில் மார்க்கெட் என்னங்கிறது தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும், எங்கிருந்து நம்ம இம்போர்ட் எக்ஸ்போர்ட் பண்றோம், ஸோ அந்த நாடுகளுடனான நம்மளோட உறவு எப்படி இருக்கு, அண்ட் வை தெர் இஸ் ப்ரைஸ் ரைஸ் அண்ட் ஃபால், அண்ட் ஹவு this oil trade impacts India's foreign policy. So all these things are quite interesting, and you need to pay attention and interrelate so many things to understand things around you. And that is why the subject is really interesting. And IR, from an exam perspective, is a very unique subject, because in prelims you will see only questions coming from current affairs mostly. Okay, there is nothing called static portion in IR. Okay, everything is ever changing in the world, right? So till last month it was like US is going to quit from climate change deal, that is Paris climate change deal. It's going to get out of UNESCO. It's going to be not so actively involved in Afghanistan and a lot of other things. So now within a month, with presidential election, the change of the president, and what happens, the entire thing will undergo some amount of shift, if not a bigger shift in things. There will still be changes. For example, during Obama regime, he wanted trans-Pacific partnership. So we see him favoring, relations with the other countries around the Pacific. And suddenly, after Trump came into place, he said, no, no, nothing doing. So Trump was against multilateralism in a lot of way, and Obama was for it. And we are yet to see what Biden is for. So these kind of things, are very relevant to watch for, because it helps you understand what government of India is doing, and how our domestic politics and policies also influence the global trade and the global geopolitics. Okay, so these kind of things you need to understand. So that is why we have it, and anything is current according to international relations when it comes to UPSC prelims. Today we'll right now discuss how UPSC prelims questions have been in the past 3 to 4 years when it comes to IR specifically. மற்ற கிளாஸ்லாம் நம்ம எப்படி போனோம் அப்படின்னா, first we saw polity, the subject, then we went to do the questions. But this class I'm introducing straight away to questions, because now that you got acquainted with a lot of things in your subjects, you can easily understand what is being asked in the exam and how much to prepare for it when you read newspaper itself. Okay, so as and when we see each question, I'll tell you, inside this particular area you need to look into these facts. I will generally give you a picture through which you can easily do your IR preparation, and it's really, really easy, trust me. And when it comes to mains, international relations, it is relatively easy if you have done some amount of work towards your prelims, except that you have to pick some stats and figures. Okay, and one more important thing is, in order to know a bilateral relationship better, for example, if you need to know India China relations completely, you just need to understand a little bit of history. Okay, so history of India, the political history of India, as well as China, and a little bit of what has happened thus far, because the past has a complete influence on the present. Whatever is happening today, it's not just today's events, it has its impact from the past when it comes to international relations. So when it comes to bilateral relations, you need to know a little bit of history to make your answers better. Okay, so read a lot. Okay, இப்போ நம்ம வந்து again and again, when you see in India China relations news, you can see that 1962 war பத்தி உங்களுக்கு நிறைய தெரிஞ்சிருக்கலாம், whether Nehru committed a mistake அப்படின்னு நிறைய எடிட்டோரியல்ஸ் எழுதுறாங்க. Then how the Modi era has changed it, UPA regimeல எப்படி இருந்தது. So these kind of basic things will help you understand the relations better. Okay, so when you have leisure time, go and watch some videos, or watch extra and read some extra information on the history of those relationship, to make your understanding better. Okay, now switching to slides, and we will start seeing what are the last 3 years Ia questions in prelims, and what is the area that you need to prepare for the coming year to appear. Okay, yes, so yeah. So these are the previous year questions, and I have started from 2018 because to have or easy understanding, and the recent trend மட்டும் பார்க்கறதுக்காக. How can history be biased? Whatever has happened, and people, yeah, the opinion can be biased, but the facts cannot be biased. So I'm asking you to go and know different facts. Okay, understand different opinions. Okay, you cannot say something is biased, but for instance, what do you call a biased information when it comes to India China relation? Can you name something that you consider as bias? Okay, yeah, like Nehru is wrong or right. Yeah. So see, Nehru is wrong or right அப்படிங்கிற கொஸ்டினுக்கு வந்து you need to think a little bit. For instance, 1962 war, yes, it gave a big blow to India. It was a great surprise for Nehru himself. He was not very prepared to meet such a situation. We will see what is Nehruvian foreign policy and why it was not amicable for handling China. But however, you cannot blame everything that has already happened. Okay, after Nehru there were 40-50 years of relationship. So what were these governments doing? What have we done towards handling things better? Rajiv Gandhi once visited China, and thereafter we have seen a lot of meetings with China. And even now in Modi's era, Mr. Modi's era, we see him meeting him one day, and the next day there are skirmishes on the border. So it doesn't mean India has always had a good relationship with them, and now it got spoiled. Nothing like that, right? So we have always been troubled neighbors. That's the fact. So like Nehru screwed it or not, it's debatable, right? So give your opinion like this when you write an answer. When you're asked to write historically this has changed, trace the evolution of India China relations and critically analyze. If they ask you, you trace the relationship so far, and you tell them that these are the opinions given by different sections. But however, it has to be understood that Nehru did what was right for those times, because a man who was a, a prime minister for a very young democracy, okay, and that too for so long, like nearly 10 to 11 to 12 years, and he tried his level best to handle the issues of those days. Okay, so completely blaming it on him is not right. But however, 1962 situation was not as anticipated by the leadership of our country. Okay, that's how you need to take a ground. not favoring any of those. So you can cite multiple opinions, but you cannot be biased saying this is right, this is wrong. Okay, that would be the right way to do it. So read every opinion, that doesn't matter, except those that are really stupid. Read every valid opinion, and you arrive at a not so biased part. That would be better. Okay. So yes, now looking into this question in 2018. So what is terminal high altitude area defense, sometimes seen in the news? So these kind of questions are questions where you cannot really answer without knowing anything about it. Okay, if you are entirely new to preparation and you haven't had known about this, it's better to quit this question. Shall I tell you why? It's because it's a four option question. Okay, if you have no idea, you're just going to do inky pinky ponky over there, right? So that will not help at all. Okay, but whoever has prepared for an year or so in 2018 would know this question. Okay, so they would have attempted. So what I mean to say is, in IR there will be questions where you either know it or you don't know it at all. You cannot take logical guesses in these kind of questions. Okay, in the questions la logical guess work எல்லாம் ஆகாது. You cannot. Okay, so these kind of questions you need to be really aware whenever you read some terminology, okay, or some abbreviation in IR. Make a note of it, know something about it, okay, without fail. Okay, because they can be asked like a four option question like this. Okay, it could either be about the purpose or what that project is, or it could be a fact. Even if facts are asked, it would be a bigger question. It will not be this four option kind of a question. So when there is a four option question, it definitely means all the options are going to be closed. In 2018, everything that is mentioned in the four options were in current affairs. So how would you decide whether it is this or that without knowing what it is? Okay, so here we cannot take a guess. Okay, so these kind of questions are, possible. You need to see and uh, read daily newspaper to pick up some important terminologies that could be asked in the examination. So this is one category of questions where it's purely a fact. You either know it or you don't know it. Okay, it depends on your preparation for an year whether you will be able to attend such question in the exam hall or not. Okay, now let's look into this question. This kind of question is really really easy, because they'll keep appearing in newspaper not just a day but multiple times. Okay, so this is related to geopolitics. Okay, so UPSC can ask questions where, where there is civil war, or where there is, where ISIS is fighting, where there is a battleground, there is a considerable change in the region occupied by some fighting groups. Okay, some extremists, etc. Okay, so these are locations that will keep appearing in your question paper. I mean, sorry, keep appearing in your newspaper, which you need to pick and understand. And even in these, if you see, they'll not ask very small areas. Only the prominent ones in a country will be in news, and only that can be asked as a question. Okay, so you need not go and mug up every location in Afghanistan or every location in Palestine. Unnecessary. Okay, whatever is in newspaper, okay, if it is a capital of that country, or if that is newly captured by a extremist wing or a civil rights group or a terrorist group or something like that, or some important event happens in that place, okay, that is a place of significance, and those regions you are supposed to keep in memory. Okay, you need to just know which country it belongs to and if it has any other significance. Okay, yes. Now coming to the third question. So IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. So this question, it was in current affairs, but in 2020, you can see a question having got repeated from IAEA. So it means if you read something in a previous year question, you need to go and dig deeper in that particular area. Okay, so I'll show you the 2020 question later on, but you need to understand that if International Atomic Energy Agency is in news, it is because the civil nuclear reactors, okay, they come under this safeguard. Okay, IAEA is responsible for supervision of the nuclear reactors. Okay, and nuclear reactors and missile systems, all these are favorite areas of UPSC when it comes to prelims, because uh, these are related to the peace and harmony of our entire world, right? So if one country does something that is violating the sovereignty of the other, or if it is attacking the other country, then obviously a global war can start. We can see a world war 3. So these kind of troubled things, troubling things are possible in question paper if it's in current affairs. Okay, so you need to understand that if you, in the 2020, if they have asked, UPSC can go and dig deeper in that particular area, though it might not sound very conventional. ஓகே, இப்போ ஐஏஇஏல ஓகே எதுக்கு ஐஏஇஏ இருக்கு, அதோட பர்பஸ் பார்ப்போம், அதோட கோல் என்னன்னு பார்ப்போம், ஐஏஇஏக்கு அதர் நேம்ஸ் பார்ப்போம், ஹெட் குவார்ட்டர்ஸ் எங்கேன்னு பார்ப்போம், அதோட நிறுத்திடுவோம். Okay, but recently they asked something else, something much more in detail, which means UPSC expects you to be much ahead when it comes to questions that are previously asked. Okay, so you need to prepare those areas in depth. Now, so this is another question where, it's very, very easy. This is depending on whether you have an understanding of not who is a member, but who is not a member. ஓகே, ஒருத்தர் அதுல மெம்பரா இல்லையாங்கிறது எப்படி தெரியும்? இட்ஸ் வெரி வெரி ஈஸி. ஓகே, நம்மளோட இப்ப ஆர்சிஇபி கொஸ்டின் கேக்குறாங்க அப்படின்னா இந்தியா மெம்பரா இல்ல. இந்தியா ஏன் மெம்பரா இல்ல? பிகாஸ் சைனா வாண்ட்ஸ் டு பி அ பார்ட் ஆஃப் இட். அண்ட் ஹூ ஆர் த அதர் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் பிளேயர்ஸ் இன் ஆர்சிஇபி? ஸோ இப்படி நம்ம படிக்கும்போது இஷ்யூ வைஸா வென் யூ ஆர் கவரிங் சம்திங், it is easy for you to understand who can be a part of this grouping and who cannot be. Okay, also if you read the goals and objectives of that particular grouping, okay, then it's very very easy for you to understand who will be a part of it and who will not be a part of it. Okay, these logics you will develop as you read and read and read. Okay, so this kind of question is another type. Okay, you need to know who is a member or who is not a member. Okay, that would have been definitely in news because of something going on. Okay, so this is one type of question. Okay, and another is conventions. Okay, like you see in this one, International Labor Organization Convention 138 and 182. Okay, so இந்த மாதிரி questions again ILO ஓட number, convention ஓட number கொடுத்துட்டு they ask you what is it related to. So this is again a question where you're not supposed to take any risk if you don't know what it is, but however it would have been in current affairs. Okay, if you have a memory of knowing it or reading it somewhere, you can take a risk. Otherwise, this ABCD questions where you have 4 options and you know nothing about that convention, it's better not to take that kind of a risk. However, if there is a statement question relating to this convention, you can attempt that question, because either there will be a logically wrong statement or a factually wrong statement or unrelated objective. அதாவது இப்போ வந்து ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் லேபர் ஆர்கனைசேஷன் வந்து வேற ஏதாவதோட டீல் பண்ற மாதிரி இருக்கும். Okay, something really irrelevant. Okay, so those kind of areas where you have statements and you can use your logic to eliminate those questions, you can attempt. However, if you have 4 options and you have no idea of those conventions, refrain from answering those questions. Okay, yes. So this is another one. India enacted the Geographical Indications of Goods Act 1999 in order to comply with the obligations to which organization? Okay, this and all is very, very easy if you have gone through current affairs. But if you don't know, it's better not to attempt. So, which means there will be acts, policies, or any reports related to international relations, if it's also related to domestic politics, it can be asked in the exam. Okay, so this is something, yeah, you're right, it's WTO. Okay, so these kind of things are important. That is, reports or any acts or policies that India has as a result of some convention internationally or some organization nudging us to do something. Okay, so these kind of things you need to remember. So you can see the trend repeating. You see that here you have important countries with some regions of it. Why? இதில் இந்த ஆப்ஷன்ஸில் இருக்கிற எல்லா கண்ட்ரீஸ்லையுமே there was civil unrest and there was separatist tendency. What do you mean by separatist tendency? Means some part of the country wants to go away from that country, secede from the country, cut off its relations with that country, and want to become a completely sovereign part by itself. ஓகே, தனி தமிழ்நாடு அப்படின்னு சொல்றாங்கல்ல, அதே மாதிரி பஞ்சாப் வாண்ட்ஸ் இட்ஸ் ஓன் டெரிட்டரி, அந்த மாதிரி. Okay, Kashmir wanted itself cut off. So these kind of things were happening in these four countries. They were in news. Catalonia especially was in news that year, and they chose such other countries to create a question. Okay, so this is how you need to relate and read. Okay, if you see something happening, you need to understand if this phenomena is normal, if lot of such things are happening around. Okay, for example, இந்தியாவுக்கும் பங்களாதேஷ்க்கும் வந்து ரிவர் வாட்டர் டிஸ்பியூட் இருக்கு, இந்தியாவுக்கும் பங்களாதேஷ்க்கும் வந்து ரிவர் வாட்டர்ல டிஸ்பியூட் இருக்கு, அல்லது இந்தியாவுக்கும் சைனாக்கும் வந்து ரிவர் வாட்டர் ஷேரிங்ல டிஸ்பியூட் இருக்கு, இந்தியாவுக்கும் பாகிஸ்தானுக்கும் வந்து டிஸ்பியூட் இருக்கு அப்படின்னா, வாட் தே வுட் டூ? Okay, they would give you some facts about those rivers, right, in newspaper, and you will see how we have had a issue. Okay, and what's the history of the issue. But what will UPSC do? Those minimum facts are not relevant for UPSC because you cannot remember each and every one of those. So what instead UPSC will do, it will pick up some areas where such river water or boundary issues is common in South Asia or in Asia itself, and pick it and make it a question. Okay, so whenever such thing is happening, go for a wider reading. Okay, எங்கயாவது ஒரு பக்கம் secessionist tendency இருக்கு, they are asking for a sovereign or an independent government அப்படின்னா, what you can do, you can go and check whether such things are happening around the world, and if so, where. Okay, so that would help you do this better. Okay, now coming back to rule of law index. Rule of law index is released by whom? This was asked as a question. So here you need to again see the trend repeating. Okay, an act or policy or index or a report given by any world organization becomes important. Okay, that you need to pick from your current affairs. Then, so yes, here is a question on nuclear. So here is a question on nuclear suppliers group. Okay, so that year NSG's membership for India was denied, and that was in question. Okay, so that is why this was in news, and they have asked questions. When we look into our slides, we will discuss how it's important. So in the madriyana groupings, nuclear suppliers group, MTCR, okay, was an R, Australia. So in the madri there are different groupings. Okay, so you need to understand whether India is a member of it or not, why it's a member or why it is not a member, what is stopping India from becoming its member, etc. You need to understand. Okay, so next question. This is one recent area where UPSC is asking question like Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. So banks, investment banks or international organizations or banks are becoming very important nowadays. Okay, in question paper. Then, so again, you can see some index. Okay, World Bank index order, again that is asked. They went into the parameters, okay, not just some index, they went into the parameters. Then we have this one, this was also in news, General Data Protection Regulation, because India is creating a data privacy law, okay, based on this particular thing only. Okay, so they are was it was a newspaper and they asked this question. Okay, now, so this is again another thing about nuclear fields. See, we had civil nuclear field supervision was an area bestowed under supervision of IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency. This was 2018 question. Again, something related to nuclear fields is coming in 2019. You can again see IAEA coming in 2020. So this is the trend. Okay, some questions keep repeating, and you need to prepare those regions better. Okay, yes. And this is one question where you kind of have to use your logic to answer. So this is the kind of question I was talking about. They will give you a convention and give some 3 to 4 statements that are relevant to it, and you need to find the right statement. Here it's not that very difficult. When we explain, when we see the how to answer these questions, I'll tell you how it is easily detectable. But however, you need to understand these kind of questions are also possible. Okay, ஒரு UN convention it is for child laborங்கிறதோட you should not just keep going away. You need to look what convention it is. Okay, what is it about, what is its goal, how it is trying to implement, how will it make a change அப்படிங்கிறதையும், has India ratified it or not அப்படிங்கிறதையும் you need to understand. Okay, I'll give you a framework, but now, for now, see how different questions are coming. Again, this is another report that has come. Okay, then see, I in 2020 they gave again the conventions, different conventions. So if you know, if you had continuously followed Corona, you would have seen this Alma Ata Declaration and Talanova dialogue. With this, answering this question is actually easy. Answer is C1 and 3 only. So it's easy, given that you follow these things in newspaper regularly. Okay, but this is a relatively difficult question. People who have some wider reading in IR only can answer this, because it demands like லாஸ்ட் 5 இயர்ஸ்ல ரிலேஷன்ஷிப் எப்படி இருந்தது, லார்ஜஸ்ட் ட்ரேடிங் பார்ட்னரா இல்லையா, அதுக்கப்புறம் கன்சிஸ்டன்ட்லி இன்க்ரீஸ்ட்னு கொடுத்துருக்காங்க. ஸோ ஆல் தீஸ் ஆர் கீ வேர்ட்ஸ். Okay, so there are too many traps inside this question, and if someone is a PSIR student, they would know the trends better and they could possibly arrive at this answer. But for a normal student, this would have been a difficult one. Okay, so gone are the days when UPSC did not ask bilaterals in prelims. General bilateral relations. Bilateral na enna? One country with other country. So in our case, India with any other country, India with China, India with Nepal. Such questions used to come only in mains. Okay, but this year we saw that trend with prelims itself. So this is something to mark. It's a shift. Okay, so such questions can come more when it comes to next coming years. Okay, it's very possible. Then, in which of the following groups are all the 4 countries members of G20? Again, the members of which questions. Okay, then again I told you, right, 2018 question again coming up in 2020. So again it's about IAEA safeguards. So you see, there is always a continuity and a change. Again, this is TRIPS. Already, TRIPS is related to geographical indication. Someone answered right? So GI, geographical indication, is related to WTO. It is related to this agreement called TRIPS. So it deals with intellectual property. A similar agreement with WTO is what is TRIMS. Okay, so it's very relevant, very near. So UPSC asked a question from it. You see, this is how UPSC asks or widens its scope of asking questions. Then, so these are the questions in the past 3 years. Now, I'll tell you how to prepare each area. I'll give you a framework of sorts about how to pick each area and do it. Okay, now to the board. So in IR, there are only three major areas and under which you will have multiple subdivisions for which you need to prepare. Okay. So the first part will be bilateral relations. So in bilateral relations, which are the areas that you need to concentrate or focus more? Number one is neighborhood. Okay. And number two would be global powers. And amongst this, how to subdivide neighborhood lana the countries? Any country with borders for India. Okay. So for instance, South Asia இருக்கிற முக்கியமான countries like Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, China, Pakistan, India. Sorry, India வச்சு தான் நம்ம எழுதிட்டு இருக்கோம். So China, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Okay, so all these are countries you need to see. Okay, you need to understand how India's relationship is with all these countries. Then, from the global past perspective, in the past, USSR was a power, and the current Soviet Russia. Okay, we have had a historic relationship with them, a very significant one. So we need to see Russia. Then you need to prepare for US and Britain, because we were a colony of Britain, and parts of Middle East. Okay, so this wouldn't come under global powers, for instance. Okay, let's keep it as a separate category. Okay, others, meaning Middle East. So in Middle East, there are only certain few important countries, like it's going to be Iran. Okay, then we have relations with Saudi, we have with Israel, Palestine. Okay, and countries like Kuwait, Oman, etc., where our diaspora is there. Okay, so these are important areas where you need to prepare. Okay, so this comes to bilaterals. Bilateral na enna, one country is in relationship with another country in terms of trade, in terms of politics, in terms of give and take, or they can be standing together for some ideal, or it's for the global harmony, something like that. Okay, where you have some intent that is coinciding for both the countries, or there can be things where they differ largely but they still tend to maintain a relationship. So generally we need to see these areas. Okay, so in neighborhood, any country that shares our border in South Asia, like China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And in global powers, you need to see USSR, US, Britain, Middle East, Britain. Then the other countries where you need to is part of Middle East, and you also need to know in other Asian countries where you need to focus is Japan. Okay. Then you also need to see one more country, um Japan and Koreas. Okay, both the North and South Koreas. Then you also need to see Not very significant, but Australia also, because we have coal and other things coming from Australia. So this is the general framework. If you know India's relationship with these countries, it's more than enough. Okay, that is one part. And other not so significant part is relationship with other continents. ஓகே, ஸோ ஆஃப்ரிக்காவில் ஒரு ஸ்பெசிஃபிக் கண்ட்ரியை நேம் பண்ணி இந்தியா வந்து அந்த கண்ட்ரியோட என்ன ரிலேஷன்ஷிப்பில் இருக்குங்கிறத வச்சு கொஷின் கேட்கறதுக்கான சான்சஸ் ஆர் வெரி வெரி லெஸ், ரைட்? ஸோ திஸ் கொஷின் குட் பி லைக், ஹவு இஸ் த ரிலேஷன்ஷிப் வித் ஆஃப்ரிக்கா? ஓகே, ஹவு இந்தியா இஸ் maintaining its relations when it comes to African nations. ஓகே, இன் ஜென்ரல் அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு பர்டிகுலர் காண்டினென்ட் வச்சு தான் கேட்பாங்க. இந்தியாஸ் ரிலேஷன்ஷிப் வித் லாட்டின் அமெரிக்கன் கண்ட்ரீஸ். ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி தான் கேட்குறதுக்கு ஸ்கோப் இருக்கு. ஆஃப்ரிக்கா, லாட்டின் அமெரிக்காலலாம் தே கேன் நாட் நேம் ஒன் கண்ட்ரி ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்கலி அண்ட் ஆஸ்க், எக்ஸப்ட் வேர் வி ஹாவ் that country having some part in some grouping. For example, இப்போ பிரேசில் அப்படின்னா simply they won't ask. Brazil is part of BRICS, where India is also a part. So அப்படி இருந்தா மட்டும்தான் a not so significant country can be asked in question. Otherwise there is very less chance of naming some country in some other continent and asking a question about it. Okay, so that's very rare. So this is how you need to prepare for bilateral relations. Now I'll move on to the next part. So we finished this one, which is bilateral. Okay, now we are going to international organizations. Okay, so this part is important for exam. Okay, இப்போ international organizations அப்படிங்கும்போது World Bank, IMF, WTO, these three are very significant when it comes to the economic sphere. Okay, you would have read already in economy classes, I guess. Okay, then the others, United Nations, inside which you have multiple other secretariats and other specialized organizations which you need to kind of understand. Then okay, some protocols, conventions, treaties, reports, and indices. Okay, so anything in an international organization like a protocol, a convention, a treaty, a report, or index, okay, it becomes important. You would have heard of this transparency index, right? You would have heard about ease of doing business index. So it's index. Okay, it ranks countries depending on their performance. So that is what you call an index. If it is given by any global organization, I'm just naming a few here, I'm not going into everything, but if that is there, then that is important. Okay, then any report given by these international organizations, that becomes important. Then any treaty concluded, okay, if they have negotiated something and if they have negotiated a treaty, then it becomes important. Then if there is any convention, okay, that becomes important, like international labor organization, etc. Then you have something called protocols. Yes, for example, in environment you see protocols. Okay, so if you need to curb pollution, there can be a protocol for it. So these kind of things you need to remember. Okay, yes. So these are about international organizations. When you read an international organization, you need to know what is, if there is a treaty concluded under it, or what is the treaty that led to its establishment. Okay, எந்த ட்ரீட்டி மூலியமா அப்படி ஒரு ஆர்கனைசேஷன் உருவாக்கப்பட்டது அப்படிங்கறதே உங்களுக்கு தெரியணும். Then you need to understand its objective, what are the reports it gives, what is the indices published by it, or if there is any other convention, etc. Okay, so these are the things when you need to know in relation to prelims exams. Okay, then comes what is called the regional organization. Okay, regional organization. Regional organization na only one part of the world. Okay, only few countries will be a member. Okay, let's take a region like South Asia. Okay, South Asia la இருக்கிற முக்கியமான organization என்ன? SARC. Right? So how about Southeast Asia? We have something called ASEAN, right? Association for Southeast Asian Nations, right? Then what do we have interconnecting these two? We have BIMSTEC. Okay, and now what is ASEAN plus another 5 FTA members? That is RCEP. Is there such an organization in Europe? Yes, that is called EU, European Union. Okay, so in the madri organizations, regional or particular region la irukra members, they become members of that grouping, and that is a small grouping. Okay, it's not for the entire world. Its membership is not opened up for the entire world. Only few countries will be part of it, only that particular region. அதுக்கான ரீசன் என்னங்கிறதெல்லாம் நம்ம பார்ப்போம். பட் இந்த மாதிரி குட்டி குட்டியா இருக்கக்கூடிய ரீஜனல் ஆர்கனைசேஷன்ஸ் பத்தி நீங்க என்ன தெரிஞ்சுக்கணும் அப்படின்னா, நம்பர் ஒன், their objective. Okay, for example, இப்ப சார்க் அல்லது ஆசியான் இதெல்லாம் வந்து எக்கனாமிக் பிளஸ் பொலிட்டிக்கல் grouping. கரெக்டா? EUமே it is a kind of economic union. Okay, but there can be other organizations like SCO which has more to do with economy as well as security. Okay, countries cooperate in terms of security. Okay, so there can be different objectives for a region to come together. For a grouping to stand together, there could be multiple objectives. Okay, so that is something you need to know. Okay, objective of that organization. Then you need to understand members of that organization. So members, in case there are multiple members, there are so many members, then you need to go into a simplified logic of finding out its members. எப்படி அப்படின்னா, you need not mug up. For example, if there are 30 members inside a grouping, it's not reasonable to mug up all those things, right? So see if India is a member. Any organization is important only if India is a member of it. Okay, or India is trying to join that grouping, only then it's a news for us, right? Only then it's a member, only when it's a member. So just see if India is a member. Okay, note it down. And who are our neighbors inside that grouping? Who are our neighbors inside that grouping? You see, then is India having troubled relation with any of the members? For example, India, China are already fighting. Can they be together? So அவங்க இருக்காங்களா, ஒண்ணா இருக்காங்களா? India and Pakistan, for instance, ரெண்டு பேர் ஒண்ணுல மெம்பரா இருந்தாங்கன்னா அந்த grouping's effectiveness will be reduced like anything, right? That is one of the major reasons why SARC is ineffective. Why SARC is ineffective? Because every meeting in SARC is just reduced to a quarrel between India and Pakistan. Okay, and that is why SARC became almost inefficient, right? So you see how இந்தியாக்கு யாரோட ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கோ அல்லது யாரோட மெம்பர்ஷிப்பை இந்தியா வந்து டினை பண்ணுதோ அல்லது இந்தியாவுக்கு மெம்பர்ஷிப்பை யாராவது டினை பண்றாங்க அல்லது அவங்க கூட நமக்கு வந்து ஏதாவது ஒரு ப்ராப்ளம் இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிற பட்சத்துல தான் that question could be an important point in the news, and that could be the reason why such question about membership arises. Okay, அப்படி இல்லாம ரேண்டமா நம்ம இல்லாம ஒரு குரூப்பிங்லயோ அல்லது நம்ம இருந்த குரூப்லயே நம்மளை விட்டுட்டு மீதி இருக்கிற கண்ட்ரீஸை வச்சு கொஸ்டின் கேட்குறாங்க அப்படின்னா then you need to know all the members. There is no other way, but not always such questions will appear. Okay, if such a question comes, then it's difficult for everyone, not just you. Okay, because everyone wouldn't have paid attention to every other member in the grouping except when it is very small. Okay, for example, SARC-ல யார் மெம்பர் இல்லைன்னு கண்டுபிடிக்கிறது ஈஸி because it's only South Asia. Okay, it's only going to be India and its neighborhood. Okay, சம்மந்தமே இல்லாம சிங்கப்பூர் மலேசியா கொடுத்தாங்கன்னா you can eliminate, right? So such small groups you need to know the members, but if it is a larger grouping consisting of so many countries with which India doesn't have that good a rapport, then you need not really go into each member mugging up each member. Okay, there should be a short trick to understand those regions. Then there are if they are regional groupings, they might have some mechanisms as well. Okay, mechanisms like SEO has something called rats. Okay, it's to check the flow of money for terrorist activities. Okay, so if there is some specific mechanism in that grouping, in that regional grouping, then you need to know that mechanism. Okay, it's not just about regional organization. If even if it's a global organization, having some kind of a mechanism like that specified for a purpose, then you need to know it. Okay, so these are the basic things. So நம்ம வந்து மொத்தமா மூணு ஏரியால தான் ஃபோக்கஸ் பண்ணுவோம். Bilateral relations, multilateral relations, that is international organizations, then regional organizations. Okay, this is how the IR entire part could be read and prepared. Okay, you need to divide your thing into these portions and do it. Now let's look into Indian foreign policy. Okay, so before going into Indian foreign policy, tell me what is a foreign policy, please. Someone type out what foreign policy means. What do you mean by Indian foreign policy? Someone, 100 times, Mr. Prabhu, we have talked about PSAR in the initial classes. We also have a separate video talking about the optional and PSAR. So go and watch that video. Yes, someone tell me what is meant by a foreign policy? The rules related to export and import are. There is nothing more than import and export in foreign policy. If we talk about only import export becomes part of your economy, right? So how is that a foreign policy? Indian foreign, who is our external affairs minister? To strengthen India's national interest. Yeah, we have a foreign policy to strengthen India's national interest. But what is a foreign policy? Define foreign policy for me. Relation between countries becomes international relations. Then what's the difference between international relations and foreign policy? What's the difference? Yes, Mr. S. Shankar. Yeah. Amit Shah. Who is that? Nandini? Do you read newspaper? What is Mr. Amit Shah's portfolio? What is Mr. Amit Shah's portfolio? First of all, what is portfolio? For those people who are not very serious about the preparation, don't, really, yes, good, he's a home minister. Yeah. So don't really waste your time. Okay, if you're doing UPSC, be serious. Or if not, don't try UPSC. Okay. So because it's a very serious business where the preparation itself takes a lot of time. Okay. Yes, it gives you a lot of exposure, but if you're not really dedicated, and for writing some other exam, if you're investing on this, it doesn't make any sense, because this exam is more specialized than it appears to be. Okay, you might feel like, yeah, இதை பத்தி தான் தெரிஞ்சுக்கிறோம், okay, இவ்வளோதானா இந்த exam. No way. The process is even more detailed and difficult than what you see it as, simply. So there is a lot of difference. Now, yes, coming to this part again, what is Indian foreign policy? Someone give me a convincing answer. Indiaவோட foreign policy என்ன அப்ப? Okay, you would have understood, no? Okay, நம்ம இப்போ வந்து இந்தியா வந்து சைனாவோட we have trade. Yes, we have some problems in the border. Indian foreign policy னா இதுதான் அப்படின்னு உங்களுக்கு ஒரு புரிதல் இருக்கும் இல்லையா? What do you think is India's foreign policy? How India deals with other countries? Do you have any understanding? With that, can you find out what is exactly a foreign policy? Objective guiding relationship with various nations. A very good explanation. Okay, so when you correspond with another country, okay, who may be your neighbor or who is in some other part of the world, when you deal with that country, it's because you have some objective, and towards achieving that objective you have a set of rules or set of ways in which you deal with that country. Okay, so we kind of have a set of not so fixed. Okay, நம்மளோட foreign policyங்கிறது fixed கிடையாது. ஓகே, அதாவது 1950ல நம்மளோட அப்ஜெக்டிவ் இதுதான் அப்படின்னு எழுதி வச்சுட்டு இன்னைக்கும் வந்து அதையவே ஃபாலோ பண்ற ஸ்டாட்டிக்கான விஷயம் கிடையாது. இட்ஸ் டைனாமிக், meaning India keeps changing its ways depending on the geopolitics. Okay, depending on the situation, depending on what's going around us, we calibrate our response. Okay, so it's more ad hoc, we could say. Okay, now and then we decide on issues about how to deal with it. Okay, um, cooperation of sovereign states based on multinational international agreement and comprising of a relatively stable range of participants. Okay, that's more about multilateralism. Yes, how to cooperate between different countries and how to, work towards a global peace, security, a good climate, etc., etc., when it comes to multilateralism. Okay, yes, in simple terms, how to maintain relationship with other. So how are the ways, what are the ways in which we are going to do it? These kind of things is what we call a foreign policy. But now coming to the slide and seeing the exact definition. Okay, so it tells you, this slide tells you what foreign policy is. Foreign policy is the system of activities, the system of activities evolved by communities for changing the behavior of other state and for adjusting their own activities to the international environment. Okay, so what is the statement saying? சில ஆக்டிவிட்டீஸ் நம்ம பண்ண வேண்டியிருக்கும் இந்தியா. எதுக்காக? ஒன்று, மற்ற கண்ட்ரி இப்படி பண்ணாதேன்னு சொல்றதுக்காக, அல்லது நம்மளோட ஓன் பிஹேவியரை சேஞ்ச் பண்ணிக்கிறதுக்காக. ஓகே, இது எப்படின்னு நம்ம எக்ஸாம்பிள் பார்ப்போம். ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள், இப்போ இந்தியா சைனா பார்டர் இஷ்யூ அப்படின்னு வச்சுக்கிட்டோம் அப்படின்னா, இப்போ என்ன நடக்குது? சைனா எப்படியெல்லாம் ரியாக்ட் பண்ணக்கூடாது அப்படிங்கிறத கண்டெம் பண்றதுக்கு கூட நம்ம என்ன யூஸ் பண்றோம்? நம்மளோட ஃபாரின் பாலிசி தான் யூஸ் பண்றோம், right? So we are asking China to not build roads in those sensitive regions, okay? And you're not supposed to intrude in our territory அப்படிங்கறது சொல்றோம். So it tells you some strategy that has been evolved by the country or a community to change the behavior of other country. In this case, in this example, it is China. Or what happens if China proves that in future, I'm talking about a hypothetical situation, if China proves in the future time that that territory belongs to China and India has kept it occupied for so long, through a international cooperation, through negotiation and treaty, what we can say, yes, yes, this part belongs to China, so China can have it abdinட்டு. Okay, there are instances where we have given up some of our territory and power to the other country. For instance, the marine boundary between India and Bangladesh. Okay, the area till which Indian fishermen can fish. Okay, that territory has been shared with Bangladesh. Okay, so we gave some amount of territory to them because India's coast will, fishermen's part will extend for a wider area, whereas Bangladesh people, they can fish only till here. No, this is their zone. Okay, so in order to help them, what we gave some amount, we shared that area with them. Okay, so we also adjust our behavior according to the needs that are arising. Okay, so on what, based on what, யாரு கேட்டாலும் எல்லாத்தையும் கொடுத்துருவோமா, கொடுக்க மாட்டோம், right? So there are some underlining principles based on which we operate. There are underlining principles based on which we operate. For example, we get to hear words like look east policy, look far east policy, act east policy. All these are what? These are principles that guide our actions, that guide our actions. Okay, and our foreign policy is a systematic statement of deliberately selected national interest objective. Someone, I guess Money, had made this statement in advancing our nation's interest அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. Yes, foreign policy does not alone talk about how to cooperate. Okay, இது மட்டுமே foreign policy கிடையாது. There is one more important thing, that is national interest. Okay, what India needs, okay, from either a neighbor or any other global power structure or any international organization, what India needs அப்படிங்கிறத பத்தி a stated objective, a clearly stated objective about this is what India wants. Can you name something like that? Any example? Some basic fundamental thing that India likes to have. One among those is peace. Okay? India is never for wars. Okay? India has always been a peace lover. Okay, so nama national interest is based on some ideals. Okay, so for example, non-alignment, yes, good, that is also an example. Non-alignment, how it has changed over years அப்படிங்கிறது, it's a huge debate, but however, those were also the guiding principles. Okay, when I say those were also, it means it's debated now whether it is so or not. Okay, so national interest, ஒன்னு கல்ச்சுரலா நம்ம என்னங்கிற நேஷனல் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டா இருக்கலாம். Okay, culturally, what India is, it's a peace loving country. It has propagated, dharma, the during Ashoka period, and thereafter lot of rulers have spoken about peace in the continent, right? So we have had Buddhist missions going everywhere. So culturally, what we are, culturally நம்மளோட interests என்ன, அல்லது economically நம்மளோட national interest என்ன. For example, India wants to become a, okay, India wants to become a regional power. For instance, India wants to become a regional power of Asia. Already China is a regional power, and in a way it's also the world hegemon right now. Okay, because it's able to even manipulate and challenge China, US, so it's becoming a world hegemon. But however, the regional power for now, the topmost of it would be China, for instance. So is India aspiring for a regional power in terms of economy, or when it comes to the political sphere, or internationally, by cooperating with nations and being the voice of the developed and the developing nations? So all these things, what India wants, what is the national interest? Okay, to advance the national interest, there needs to be a deliberately stated objective. Okay, so foreign policy is a reflection of these ideals. Then, so what does a foreign policy generally include? We are talking about general, not just India. Generally, what a foreign policy contains: a foreign policy includes interests and objectives. Okay, so இந்தியாவுக்கு அதோட நெய்பர்ஹுட்ல என்ன objective, சவுத் ஏஷியால என்ன objective, இந்தியாவுக்கும் அமெரிக்காவுக்கும் அது இந்தியாவுக்கு என்ன objective, okay, what is its interest, what is its objective, what it wants to achieve, is said in a foreign policy. Its principles meaning some ideals that govern it. Okay, by ideals, it means deeper things, like, we want always peace and cooperation, we don't want fight, or um, that talks about the nature of the state itself, nature of the state. Okay, then comes the means of foreign policy. Okay, so means of foreign policy அப்படின்னா எந்தெந்த வகையில we are trying to achieve, ways in which we achieve it, ways in which we achieve. For example, நம்ம வந்து peaceful country அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு can we go for war, can we? No, right? So அந்த டிபேட் தான் நமக்கு வந்து எப்பவுமே இருந்திருக்கு, ends versus in history class, I don't know if I told you this, means versus ends. ஓகே, இப்போ நம்ம ஹிஸ்டரியில பார்த்தோம்னா காந்தி வாண்டட் ஃப்ரீடம். ஓகே, ஸோ ஃப்ரீடம் இஸ் த எண்ட், கரெக்டா? பட் ஃப்ரீடம் எப்படி அச்சீவ் பண்ணலாங்கிறதுல நிறைய மாற்று கருத்துகள் இருந்தது, கரெக்டுங்களா? காந்தி வாண்டட் இட் த்ரூ நான் வயலன்ஸ். ஓகே, ஸோ ரெவல்யூஷனரி டெரரிஸ்ட் தே வாண்டட் த்ரூ வயலன்ஸ். There were other factions who wanted completely constitutional protest. They don't want to go for non-violence or violence. They just want to keep demanding to the uh, imperial power, right? So there are multiple ways to achieve. There are multiple ways to achieve the same end. So there are different means to achieve the same end. ஓகே, பட் காந்தி என்ன சொல்லுவார் அப்படின்னா, நம்ம நேர்மையான வழியில போராடி நேர்மையான வழியில தான் ஜெயிக்கணும். ஓகே, யாருக்கும் தொந்தரவு பண்ணாம, இங்க உயிர் சேதம் எதுவும் இல்லாம, மீன்ஸ் ஆர் மோர் இம்பார்ட்டன்ட்னு சொல்லுவார். ஓகே, நம்ம அடையிற கோலை அளவுக்கு எது முக்கியம், நம்ம எந்த வகையில அதை அடையிறோங்கிறதும் முக்கியம் அப்படிங்கிறது தான் காந்தியோட ஐடியா. ஓகே, வேறாஸ் நிறைய பேர் என்ன சொல்லுவாங்க அப்படின்னா, ends matter more than means. For example, நீ violence அல்லது bloodshed மூலியமா கூட ஒரு மாற்றத்தை கொண்டு வரலாம், ஆனா அது சரியான மாற்றமாக தான் இருக்கும். எப்படி நம்ம பண்றோங்கிறது முக்கியம் இல்ல, என்ன பண்றோங்கிறது தான் முக்கியம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி நிறைய பேர் சொல்லுவாங்க. ஓகே, that you can relate to the kind of things that happen in communist countries. Okay, what they do, communist countries, so they try to use violence to overthrow an unjust or inequality filled country, and they try to establish a new power structure. கரெக்டா? அவங்க எந்த வகையில் அதை பண்றாங்க, வயலன்ஸ் யூஸ் பண்ணி தான் பண்றாங்க, ஆனா அமைதிக்காக, மக்களுடைய நலனுக்காகன்னு சொல்றாங்க. ஸோ தீஸ் ஆர் கான்ட்ரடிக்டிங் த எண்ட் விச் இஸ் achieving of a powerful but peaceful state where there is no state at all when it comes to communist country through violence. It's a kind of contradiction, right? So ends mukkiyama, means mukkiyama அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. So India also gives a lot of interest, or it focuses a lot on the ways to do it. Okay, இப்ப இந்தியா சைனா, வந்து இந்தியா சைனா பார்டர்ல வந்து டிஸ்பியூட்டட் பார்டர். ஓகே, ஓவர் நைட்ல போய் இந்தியா வந்து அந்த பக்கத்தை நான் அட்டாக் பண்ணி இந்த ஏரியா என்னோட தான், நான் இதை திருப்பி எடுத்துக்க போறேன், அல்லது சைனா இது என்னோட தான் அப்படின்னு ஃபோர்ஸ் யூஸ் பண்ணோம் அப்படின்னா இட் வில் பிகம் அ வார் ஸ்ட்ரைட் அவே. ரைட்? எஸ், வி வாண்ட் டு டூ திஸ். We will not give up our boundary, our territory. Right? We will not give up our territory. It's our own. But the way with which we get it back matters. Right? So it is probably through negotiation, by persuading China, by proving that this is ours. We will defend this part. இதுக்கு மேல நீங்க உள்ள வரக்கூடாதுங்கிறதுல நம்ம ஒரு பக்கம் ஸ்ட்ராங்கா இருப்போம். At the same time, we will not try to force them aside and try to occupy that. Okay, so how are we doing something matters a lot when it comes to foreign policy. Okay, whether either we use coercion, or we use arms and ammunition straight away, or we use the idea of negotiation, or we use third party negotiation, or we use soft power to do it. Okay, or we use our diaspora to push another country to do it. So there are multiple ways through which what India wants could be done. Right? So our foreign policy is also reflective of the means through which we want to achieve an objective that we have. Okay, yes. Then, so a thought out course of action for achieving the objective that we have in foreign relations, that is what a foreign policy is. So we have defined a foreign policy now. So now we are coming to the point, factors shaping India's foreign policy. Okay, என்னென்ன factors determine our foreign policy அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. So number 1, national interest. National interest, that is geopolitic and geoeconomic. So geopolitics அப்படிங்கும்போது, when you belong to a territory, or for example let's say ஏஷியாங்கிற region ஒரு geographical region. Okay, அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய politics, அங்க இருக்கக்கூடிய எக்கனாமிக்ஸ், ஓகே, அதை ஒட்டி இந்தியாவுக்கு நம்ம இதுல என்ன வேணும் என்ன வேண்டாம்னு இருக்கும். ஃபார் இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ், லெட் மீ கிவ் அன் எக்ஸாம்பிள். இன் ஏஷியா, ஓகே, இந்தியாவோட ஹெட் பார்ட்ல இருந்து இங்க வரைக்கும் இப்படி ஒன் பெல்ட் ஒன் ரோட் இனிஷியேட்டிவ் ஆஃப் சைனா இஸ் தேர்னு வச்சுக்கோங்க. ஓகே, திஸ் இஸ் அ இம்பார்ட்டன்ட் geopolitical, geostrategic and geoeconomic matter. Why? Strategic அப்படினாலே geopolitic and geoeconomic ன்னு அர்த்தம் தான். Okay, strategic meaning something of very high significance, okay, in every other sphere. So when there is a road going through that region, okay, which is already kind of disputed territory, then it has political ramifications for India. It also deals with economy of India. ஏன் இப்போ இங்க வந்து ஒரு ரோட் சைனா பில்ட் பண்றது மூலியமா it will have access to India's friends and neighbors, and it will reach to the other part of the continent. ஏஷியாவை தாண்டி it can go to Europe. The Eurasian region, entire region will get connectivity. அப்ப இந்தியாவுக்கு இந்த கண்ட்ரிஸோட இருக்கிற ரிலேஷன்ஷிப், ட்ரேட், okay, in terms of oil or some other minerals or uranium, okay, anything and everything takes a different move hereafter, right, when China is trying to build a road over there, right? So our national interest shapes our foreign policy. இந்தியாவுக்கு என்ன வேணும் வேண்டாம், நம்மளோட இந்தியாவோட டிஸ்பியூட்டட் டெரிட்டரி வழியா பாகிஸ்தான் ஒரு ரோட் போட்டாலோ அல்லது சைனா ஒரு ரோட் போட்டாலோ will we agree? We wouldn't. Okay, and similarly, even if it is not in our disputed territory, still if China is building something around India, it is a matter of concern. Why? It can possibly become a threat in the future. Okay, we see the string of pearls theory, right? இந்தியாவோட இந்தியன் பெனின்சுலா அப்படின்னா இங்க எல்லாமே லைனா வந்து சைனீஸ் வந்து நேவல் பேசஸ் வந்து பில்ட் பண்ணுவாங்க. ஓகே, இப்ப சைனீஸ் நேவிக்கு பிரசன்ஸ் வந்து இத்தனை இடத்துல இருக்குன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன், இந்தியன் ஓஷனை சுத்தி. It is a real security threat for India. Is it not? So what India wants from China is not to, kind of surround India. No, it is a threat. Okay, so China may not say directly that it is going to do something to India. It says it is expanding its own sphere of influence. But however, it's a matter of concern for India, right? So any construction or any move of one country can have a geopolitical or geo-economic ramification for India. So what India wants or doesn't want from the other, okay, depending on the domestic scenario, is national interest. Okay, so depending on this national interest, our foreign policy may or may not differ. Okay, so that is one factor. Now coming to geography. Yes, geography is a major role. For example, there is a general thing, our this is Pakistan, this is India, and this is Afghanistan. Okay, உங்களோட எனிமியோட friend, எனிமியோட enemy can be your friend. எப்பவுமே ரெண்டு important countries, okay, when they share some boundary, there will always be problems, right? So geography plays a vital role. Indiaவோட எல்லா international relations concern in the neighborhood will be related to either Pakistan or China, and it's related to your boundary. Why it is a boundary issue? India is surrounded by the Himalayas, this part. Okay, this is a natural barrier for India. If China tends to take this much, then how will India have its own security? It will keep having troubles from both Pakistan and China in the future times. And that is why India wants to protect this natural territory, the geography of India. Okay, naturally, India is having a well demarcated boundary with the presence of Himalayas. Okay, that is why we want to keep that territory for ourselves. எஸ். ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி ஜியாகிரஃபி டிட்டர்மைன்ஸ் எந்த இடத்துல ஒரு கண்ட்ரி லொக்கேட் ஆயிருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறது கூட எதை டிட்டர்மைன் பண்ணும்? ஃபாரின் பாலிசியை டிட்டர்மைன் பண்ணும். ஓகே, எஸ். ஸோ லெட்ஸ் ஹாவ் அ ஸ்மால் பிரேக் அண்ட் கம் பேக். So welcome back, everyone. Hope you people came back. Yes. So நம்ம geography in terms of location பார்த்தோம். ஓகே, ஒரு கண்ட்ரி ஒரு இடத்துல லொக்கேட் ஆயிருக்கிறது மூலியமா எப்படி தன்னோட ஃபாரின் பாலிசி அதுக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி மாத்திக்குது அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. பட் ரிசோர்சஸ் குட் ஆல்சோ பி a ரீசன் த்ரூ which your foreign policy could change. Okay, how resources, can you think of some example in terms of resource? How resource can shape foreign policy? Petrol? Yes. We tend to maintain a good relationship with countries in the Middle East that supply us oil. Yes. அதுவே வந்து இப்ப திடீர்னு யூஎஸ் வந்து ஈரான் மேல சாங்ஷன்ஸ் இம்போஸ் பண்ணும்போது அவர் எனர்ஜி செக்யூரிட்டி இஸ் இன் த்ரெட். அப்ப இங்க எங்க நம்மளோட ஃபாரின் பாலிசி has to direct us to work with US as well as Iran. How to maintain an equation? You cannot sacrifice a relationship with Iran for the sanctions imposed by US, or you cannot just say US, see, yeah, we are going with you, we like your decision abdina, because our energy security is in question, right? So resource is also something that will design our foreign policy. Okay, it will determine our foreign policy. For instance, India is mostly devoid of strategic minerals except coal. Okay, we have coal. Other than that, other strategic minerals we are deficient. Okay, nuclear energy ke pathinga abdina, we have only thorium. ஓகே, ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஸ்டேஜுக்கு தேவையான யுரேனியம், ப்ளூட்டோனியம் இதுல எல்லாம் நம்மளோட ப்ரொடக்ஷன் ரொம்ப டெஃபிஷியன்ட் தான். நம்மளோட மைனிங் வெரி டெஃபிஷியன்ட் தான். அண்ட் மைன் பண்ணாலுமே we don't have enough resources. Okay, we have abundance of thorium which will be used in the third stage of the nuclear reactors. ஓகே, ஸோ ஆனா அதுவே ஃபர்ஸ்ட் இருக்கிற ரெண்டு ப்ராசஸ்க்கு தேவையான uranium or plutonium and those kind of minerals we don't have much. Similarly, for instance, photovoltaic cells, you would have heard photovoltaic cells or solar cells, okay, which are necessary for having clean energy vehicles, clean energy related vehicles. Okay, so அதுக்கு என்ன வேணும்? photovoltaic cells வேணும், solar cells வேணும். இதெல்லாம் manufacture பண்றதுக்கு we need lithium, right? And we don't have lithium. It has to be taken from Africa. Okay, and China does it properly. Okay, it takes almost all the resources of these kind of minerals, rare earth minerals and solo rare earth minerals. Okay, so நம்ம இந்த countries-ஓட எப்படி relationship வச்சிருக்கோம்? India, how is its relationship with African countries? Okay, coal, in terms of coal we have relations with Australia. How do we have it? So resources also play a predominant role in shaping a country's foreign policy. Yes? Yeah. Now, history and tradition. So this is also a very important point. Can you name an example for this? Can you name an example about how history and tradition, historical significance, historical relations can shape foreign policy? Buddhist linkages with Southeast Asia? Yes. Okay, Harappan site is there. Harappan site மூலியமா நமக்கு என்ன relations இருக்கு? How that shapes our foreign policy, Mr. Parthiban? Yeah, good, Tarni. That's a good example. Bangladesh previously was a part of India, even Pakistan and Sri Lanka. So, using that linkages, culturally, the people of India resemble those people, and therefore, correspond with them well. But however, that is not the case with Pakistan, because the politics of India and Pakistan became different after the partition. So that could be a problem. Yes. Ashwat says Indo Tibet. Yeah, exactly. We spoke about the Tibet card in our immersion video also, right? So the Buddhist linkages between India, China, Tibet in the middle. So how this could play out? Okay, yeah, temples, art and culture, tourism, exactly. Okay, so these things can shape our foreign policy. Yes. For example, when Mr. Modi ji when goes to some countries, he visits those temples there. Okay, the Hindu temples located there. Okay, or if it is a historically significant place, whether it is a Hindu place or not, we still go and visit those places, right? When the leaders of a country go to the other. So, historical significance. If there is a bondage between these two countries historically, then it is a way. And you can talk about another example also, the Silk Route. Okay, previously, what was Silk Route in the history of the Asia is what is now used by China to create the concept of one belt, one road. OBOR, right? One belt, one road. So it comes from the Silk Route concept. That is, the silk trade took place from China, okay, to Europe and Arab countries via the Central Asia part, and sometimes touching India also. Okay, sometimes touching India also. This is called a Silk Route, and that is the historical significance that OBOR has. Okay, it is also based on a ancient trade linkage between China and the other parts of the world. Okay, so these kind of traditions and history can create, some advances in the foreign policy or changes in the foreign policy. Then comes ideology. How is ideology shaping foreign policy? Can you give an example? India and China meeting in Mamallapuram due to Bodhidharman relations. What is that Bodhidharman relations? What is that? If you can say that, there were South Indian rulers, okay, who went and occupied not physically but culturally areas of Southeast Asia. நம்ம கடாரம் கொண்டான் அப்படின்லாம் சொல்லுவோம். So அதை மீன் பண்ணீங்கன்னா okay, but I don't understand what that Bodhidharman relations, especially when it comes to this Mamallapuram meet, Chennai Connect, if you're talking about, you need to go and read its significance again. So now, give me example for ideology. Gandhiism and Nelson Mandela. Yes, that's a very good example. But however, I don't think Gandhiism is driving our relations with South Africa. Okay, so can you think of any other example? Gandhiism is perfectly not, except for the peace and the non-violence part, okay, or cooperating with others and having a collective conscience when it comes to dealing with the developed countries. From the developed countries part, I don't think Gandhiism working in a real scenario now. Can you think of any other ideology that, based on which we have foreign relations? What is ideology, first of all? What is ideology? நீங்க எல்லாருமே சொல்லுவீங்க, when you talk in general debates, you say this party has no ideology. Tarni, this is again a disputed thing. Okay, how would you call, Gandhi was not for the modern kind of democracy, first and foremost. Okay, if you are giving democracy as a separate example, democracy of India influencing Nepal, yes, that's fine. But do you call democracy an ideology? It is an idea, an ideal, but would you call it an ideology? Okay, someone says liberalism. Yes, liberal principles, okay, based on rights through which democracy comes into existence. Okay, you cannot be under authoritarian form of government where there are no rights and liberties, and therefore a more liberal kind of a thing. Okay, I can understand how principle. Why nobody came up with our relationship with Russia? What was our ideological thing with Russia? Why did we have relations with Russia? Why did we oppose for US for so long? Why did we oppose US for so long? Yeah, ideology is Siddhantam, yes. Why did we have good relations with Russia and we did not have a not so good relationship for so long with US? What ideology was driving India then? Capitalism? With which country? Whose ideology was capitalism? Capitalism is. We had capitalism, is it, Ashwath? Is that what you are talking about? Russia supported India in ancient times. So, what is ancient? What is the ancient Indian history period? And how did Russia support us in that ancient times? What do you mean by that? Okay, so this seems like this thing commenting will go on forever. But yes, so Nehru, Mr. Nehru, he was attracted through the socialistic ideals and principles and the communist ideas. Okay, so he favored a Soviet model when it comes to economic progress of the country, and therefore we were for socialism, and therefore we opposed relations with the USA, which was more capital driven and capitalism driven. Yes. Okay, so this is how ideology influences our foreign policy. But however, as you know, times went on, we broke away from the tradition of socialist tendencies and we moved more towards, open economy. Open economy எல்லாம் வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் partially open or open economy வந்த பின்னவே we started embracing capitalism more, right? So then as we gradually opened up our economy for the other countries to trade with, we were not a closed economy anymore. Then what happened? Other countries started investing in us and we started moving towards USA. So you can see that USSR divide very clearly in our foreign policy till the first 2 to 3 decades. Okay, whatever move was there, we would call then we were like estranged enemies, US and India. But now we have become good friends of sorts with, you saw events like Howdy Modi, you know, we saw events like Namaste Trump. So all these things. There is no hesitation from India to indulge in a good diplomatic relationship with US now. But however, earlier days during the Nehruvian era and a decade or two after that, we were really, really hesitant about any move from USA. Okay, so yes, these are the factors influencing India's foreign policy. Okay, so why am I giving all this before we get into the real class per se? Okay, so our real class would be something like dealing with India, US, okay, then India, Russia, then India, China, India, Pakistan. Okay, this is how our classes will go. But why am I giving all this? You need to have a basic ground understanding about these things, and therefore we are doing all the theory related stuff before we do the exact relations, bilaterals or multilaterals or whatever. Okay, so yes, now we are going to different eras in foreign policy. Okay, So, by different eras in foreign policy, what do we really mean? For instance, our foreign policy was different when Nehru was there. Okay, I already told you we don't have a written fixed document for our foreign policy like throughout. Okay, 1950s இருந்து இப்போ வரைக்கும் நம்ம foreign policy ஒரே மாதிரியா தான் இருக்கா அப்படின்னா கிடையாது. Okay, it keeps changing, right? So it depended mostly on the leader of the country, or who is representing us, that is a prime minister, or whoever was a foreign minister. So in the first few years, okay, after independence, Mr. Nehru, who was the PM, was also dealing with the external relations of India. So therefore, it was mostly through his charisma and through his efforts everything was taking place. And therefore, நீங்க அவரோட ideological biases or whatever he wanted to do was more in our diplomatic relations. Okay, so Mani is asking about political organization and leadership. Yes, that also kind of influences, but not really great. நான் ஏன் சொல்றேன் அப்படின்னா, இப்போ நீங்க by political organization, if you mean, பிஜேபியா, ஐ மீன் என்டிஏவா, யூபிஏவா, யாரு அப்படிங்கிறத வச்சு நீங்க வந்து கேக்குறீங்க அப்படின்னா, or also about the leader, like whether it's Modi or Mr. Manmohan Singh, Mr. Modi or Mr. Manmohan Singh, if you're asking that kind of a thing, then the thing is, see, if you see the kind of events that has happened in the past 15 to 20 years, you can see continuity and changes in all the periods. Okay, be it UPA or NDA. Okay, UPA பண்ண நிறைய விஷயங்களை என்டிஏவும் ரிப்பீட் பண்ணியிருப்பாங்க. Okay, அதே மாதிரி let's take from Vajpayee era's example. Okay, Mr. Vajpayee, then we have Mr. Manmohan Singh, then we have Mr. Modi. So in Mr. Vajpayee's period, you see India for the first time having a very good relationship opened with Pakistan, okay, and also with USA. Okay, and again, when Manmohan Singh comes, despite of it being a UPA government or a Congress government, they still continued that trend. We saw the 123 nuclear agreement with the US, and we saw multiple avenues. Okay, on the point la on the Silicon Valley and lot of our IT sector opening to US, and நம்மளோட soft power in terms of service sector வந்து broaden ஆன period வந்து UPA period. So again, நீங்க இங்கிருந்து அப்படியே வந்து மிஸ்டர் மோடி பீரியட் பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, again மோடி himself visited the Silicon Valley, he went and met the global leaders. So அந்த அளவுக்கு வந்து அதோட continuity இருந்தது, அதோட progress இருந்தது in terms of relationshipல. So there is always continuity in the things, in the way things are done. There will be minor or sometimes major differences also. Like for instance, the way UPA dealt with Pakistan was different from the way UPA, I mean NDA dealt with Pakistan. Okay, and also Kashmir, for instance. Okay, the way Kashmir issue was remaining stagnant for so long was changed through NDA. ஆனா மெஜாரிட்டி நீங்க பாத்தீங்க அப்படின்னா கண்டினியூட்டியும் இருக்கும், சேஞ்சஸும் இருக்கும். So we cannot say we are taking an entirely different direction from where we were. Okay, இப்ப for instance, காங்கிரஸ் இருக்கும்போது பிஜேபியை blame பண்ணுவாங்க, பிஜேபி இருக்கும்போது காங்கிரஸை blame பண்ணுவாங்க, saying they did not work towards this, work towards that. But however, if you see, on the ground things will almost be the same. இப்ப இந்தியா சைனா ரிலேஷன்ஸ் இந்த பார்டர் இஷ்யூஸ்லயே பார்த்தா, I think the depending on the capacity of the state தான் வந்து ஒரு விஷயத்தை டிசைட் பண்ண முடியும். Okay, where India stands now militarily in terms of its general capacity, okay, how much of arms and ammunition it has, how much of deterrence it can create towards China, and all these things matter. So it's the capacity of state rather than an individual political organization or leadership to take a decision. It takes some amount. Okay, for example, charisma of Mr. Modi would work when it is another strongman leader from the other part, but even there is a problem. If you see in the recent times, okay, it was understood that in the recent 6 to 7 years la, globally strongman leaders will have the same kind of a chemistry, and therefore things would work on better அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. So here a strong leader could be seen as Mr. Modi, and if you see, it's Xi Jinping when it comes to China. But however, when they talk, when it is a Shanghai spirit, or when it is a Mamallapuram connect, things seem to be fine, but somehow on the ground things are really different, right? So it's more than the political organization and the leadership, because there is always a continuity in the capacity development of the state. Okay, how much of an economical power you are, how much of a military power you are, will always influence the decisions that you're going to take. Okay, so that is an important factor, but not the predominant factor, is what I meant to answer. Yes. After becoming So after becoming an independent state, Mr. Nehru, so he decided to not go with any country which would again economically colonize or politically colonize India. So he stayed away from countries like USA, which he thought was imperialistic or capitalistic in nature. Okay, so any country which is hungry for material, any country which wants capital the most, will obviously try to colonize the other, right? So that is why he tried to be away from that. And that was a period when World War II was over. Hiroshima, Nagasaki were really destructed. Okay, Japan had a very bad time. Okay, and the entire world had, in fact, because the relationship, it's not just a war between two countries. Okay, it felt like almost the entire world was fighting with each other. The countries, our entire world, in terms of countries, were fighting with each other. So what they wanted was peace and nuclear disarmament, because they saw for the first time, fighting with guns and cannons, that was entirely different. But nuclear war, it can entirely finish off the entire world that we have to live, right? So he was always for disarmament. Adanala, so you understand, it is international thing that is having a important significance for our foreign policy. Okay, and he also tried to create this non-alignment thing. Okay, so why did they have non-alignment? Because the world then was being a, okay, we have these three terms. Okay, unipolar, bipolar, okay, வேர்ல்ட் ஆர்டர்னு சொல்லுவோம். யூனிபோலார் வேர்ல்ட் ஆர்டர், மல்டிபோலார் வேர்ல்ட் ஆர்டர், பைபோலார் வேர்ல்ட் ஆர்டர். ஸோ எக்ஸ்டர்னலி, ஓகே, இன்டர்நேஷ்னலி எப்படி இந்த வேர்ல்ட் ஆர்டர் இருக்குங்கிறத பொறுத்து டொமஸ்டிக்காகவும் நம்மளோட ஃபாரின் பாலிசிஸ்லையும் சில சேஞ்சஸ் இருக்கும். ஃபார் இன்ஸ்டன்ஸ், பைபோலார் வேர்ல்ட் ஆர்டர் நீங்கள் எப்போ பார்க்கலாம் அப்படின்னா, போஸ்ட் வேர்ல்ட் வார் டூ. Okay, till the time of breaking down of Berlin Wall and uh, Soviet Russia split ஆகிற வரைக்குமே வந்து, okay, it was bipolar, meaning ரெண்டு poles தான் இருந்தாங்க. One was US, the other was USSR. Okay, so the entire world had to deal with these two countries. They had to either align with US or they had to align with the USSR. Okay, so they wanted to defend themselves by either being a part of either this camp or that camp. Okay, so this is called bipolar world order, which you saw post World War II till some 1989 and 1990. Okay, so that was how the scenario was. Upon what we chose, that is when we chose non alignment. Okay, so we don't want to be in the side of US, or we don't want to be in the side of USSR. We want to be autonomous. Okay, we want peace. We will always talk about cooperation. We don't want to create troubles for each other by producing a lot of arms and ammunitions, by coercing each other. Okay, we want to be autonomous, and we don't want to be aligned to both the factions. Okay, like US or with USSR. So that was what was called bipolar world order. So once USSR's hegemony ended, okay, USSR got split. Okay, USSR weakened another aprom. Okay, what happened? It became like okay, so unipolar, meaning US was the world hegemon. ஓகே, கிட்டத்தட்ட வந்து உலகத்துல வந்து முக்கியமான பவர்னு சொல்ற அளவுக்கு. ஓகே, we are again talking in relative sense. ஓகே, அந்த அளவுக்கு யாரும் இல்லை. பட் ஹவெவர், ஸ்டில் இஃப் யூ see Russia is important, still if you see China is important, still despite of a kind of internal disturbance and kind of turbulent domestic things in US, it still remains an important country. Okay, so relative sense la nama pesrom. Okay, so relatively US seems to be the only dominating country in after the decline of USSR. Okay, so that is called the unipolar world order. Okay, when lot of decisions and lot of things, okay, were driven the America way. Okay, how America wanted things to be, how it thinks was mostly driving the entire world. Okay, so that is unipolar world order. Okay, then comes a period of multipolar world order, and India has always been for multipolarity. What does multipolarity mean? There can be multiple forces of action. Okay, there can be multiple countries, different countries, through cooperation trying to achieve something. Okay, so why have only one power or two power? Okay, we have multiple parts, we have multiple poles, okay, which will cooperate, and they will decide the things. Okay, it's not just about decision, but it's also about shaping the history itself. So, okay, the Cold War, US, USSR, all these are huge topics which cannot be dealt with in a small class. But however, what is a Cold War? So, real war அப்படிங்கிறது physically when two countries go for war. Okay, so Cold War, it was more a psychological deterrent. Okay, இன்னொரு country வந்து only by adding, okay, for example, US வந்து will go and find some allies for itself. Okay, it will create new armaments. Okay, it will create new missiles, it will procure more ships. Okay, it will create more bases. So அப்ப USSR என்ன நினைக்கும்? What will USSR think? It will think, ஐயோ, US is doing lot of things, it is having lot of military stuff, so what I should do in case there is a threat in the future, in case there is a problem in the future, what I should do? I should be able to retaliate, right? So what USSR will do? It will do the same thing. So it will be like an infinite war. Okay, it's not taking place physically, but it's taking place through psychological games. Okay, where each one will not fight on ground. Okay, but each will be increasing its capacity. Okay, it will be more exchange of words, exchange of thoughts about who is great, who is not, etc. Okay, there will always be tension as if it's going to be a war, but however there won't be a war physically. Okay, so that was the thing going on between the camps of US and USSR. By camps of US and USSR, I mean allies with US and allies with USSR. Okay, that's how the thing was going. We will talk about it in detail for our world history class, as well as when we talk about India with US and India with USSR when we do our next class. Yes, I'll explain in detail what led to a Cold War and how it shaped the history. We will see in detail. Okay, so but basically, Cold War is this. So then coming to the multipolar world order, because we never wanted one power or two power in the world arena to decide everything. So we wanted everyone to be taken care of. We have always, நம்ம வாசுதேவ குடும்பகம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவோம். இன்க்ளூஷன் பத்தி நம்ம நிறைய பேசுவோம். India itself stands for that kind of a culture where we want to take along everyone, love, peace, harmony and welfare of everyone. ஓகே, ஸோ அந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு நேச்சர் இருக்கிறதுனால we wanted multiple poles. We wanted different power structures to interact and do something for the entire world, right? So we have always been for multipolar world order. The current situation is, like, we don't have USSR in the scenario for now. If it is US in the one side, we have China on the other side, which is opposing it. But however, we cannot straight away say it's bipolar also, because China is a rising hegemon and US is a declining hegemon. Okay, so there are also other factors now in place, like we have international organizations, we have regional organizations, we have multiple structures determining. Beyond this, we also have the industries and corporations and also terrorist groups and multiple things that decide the world order. Okay, the world should be peaceful or not decide பண்றதுல இன்னைக்கு வந்து multiple factors are involved. It's not just the countries and the leaders of the countries that determine it, right? So we have always aspired to have a multipolar world order, and we have always been talking about it in multiple places. Yes, so we always want the power to be circulated and shared with multiple countries. Okay, we don't want to have it all. Okay, so that is called decentralization of powers. If you have, if you remember the oceanic circle of powers, oceanic circle of power, the concept of Gandhi, right? When you have a lake, you put a stone in the middle. What happens? The ripples kind of transfer the energy from one part of the lake to the other. So they form out in concentric circle. It keeps going out and out, the ripples, right? So there is a transfer of the energy from one part to the other, right? So that kind of a thing, we always wanted to share power. Okay, we wanted to, take everyone along with us. When India talks about, UN reforms, it doesn't just talk about itself, it also takes into account other developing countries in the world. Okay, it also talks about how necessary it is to give a voice for the other countries. Okay, it talks about South Africa, it talks about other countries which are developing. Okay, even in terms of giving loans. Okay, we give, India especially gives a lot of loans to other countries. So in all that, it takes into account the welfare of everyone. Okay, so it's not about one single power. Okay, it's about multiple. Now coming back to the slide, the first one is Nehruvian era. Cosmopolitan, peace loving, socialist, idealist, and it was driven by the charisma of Nehru. So the first 10 to 12 years of our foreign policy was called, the Nehruvian era, is called the Nehruvian era, where it is cosmopolitan, meaning, the welfare of all. You just don't think for the nation, you think globally. Okay, you think and act globally. Okay, Nehru was a leader who strived to form non-alignment because he wanted peace for the larger humanity. Okay, he just wanted to stand counter to the ambitions of US and USSR trying to accumulate power for themselves. Okay, so he had a cosmopolitan vision, meaning it was for everyone. Okay, then peace loving, yes, we need peace. Then he was socialist. I explained you why he was a socialist, right? Yeah, so that. Then nuclear disarmament in order to transform the global order. Yes, he wanted to transform the global order, meaning he didn't want wars to come up. He didn't want bombing of each other. Okay, so he thought there should be nuclear disarmament. What does disarmament mean? Armament now, one having arms and ammunitions, okay, in one's capacity to kill the other or to defend himself. Okay, that is called arming oneself, right? So disarmament abdina disbanding, okay, removing the arms. okay, saying, okay, we are giving up arms, we are giving up guns, we are giving up nuclear weapons. Okay, that is what is called disarmament. Okay, so disarmament, nuclear disarmament, in order to transform the global order. Okay, so in order to become a peaceful globe, what we need to give up nuclear weapons. Otherwise we will keep accumulating, thinking the other will attack us, and this will keep going on. Okay, so there will be huge heap of weapons, always insecurity inside the minds of people that the other country is going to attack us, and it will never lead to any political or economic development, right? So for humanity to grow better, for the global order to be remain peaceful, we need nuclear disarmament, is what Nehru thought. Okay, so Nehru's binding interest in multilateral institutions. Again, Nehru is criticized mostly for taking the Kashmir issue to UN, okay, and the river water issue to UN and things like that. But however, it was Nehru's increasing attachment to the internationalா யாராவது ஒருத்தர் எல்லாருக்கும் நடுவுல அன்பயஸ்டா இருந்து சில முக்கியமான ஜட்ஜ்மெண்ட்ஸை தரணும், அதுக்காக தான் மல்டிலேட்டரல் இன்ஸ்டிடியூஷன்ஸ் இருக்கணும். மல்டிலேட்டரல் மீனிங், மல்டிலேட்டரல் மீனிங் multiple countries come together, multiple stakeholders are involved in an institution like UN. ஓகே, ஸோ அந்த மாதிரியான ஒரு இன்ஸ்டிடியூஷன்ல நேருக்கு நம்பிக்கை இருந்தது. ஓகே, a third party who will involve and determine the disputes running between countries. Okay, so he thought someone, a third person or an organization where you have representation of all the countries in the world, will deal with the bilateral issue better. ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள், இப்போ இந்தியா பாகிஸ்தான் பிரச்சனைனா நான் அதை வந்து ஒரு வேர்ல்டு அரீனாக்கு எடுத்துட்டு போறேன், ஒரு மல்டிலேட்டரல் இன்ஸ்டிடியூஷன் லைக் யூஎன்க்கு எடுத்துட்டு போறேன். They will be a better judge because UN also has members of different countries. Okay, that's how he thought. But in the days to come, what we realized was things between two people is better settled between those two people rather than taking it to the world arena. ஏன்னா அப்ப திரும்பவும் என்ன ஆகும், பாகிஸ்தான் வந்து இப்போது கண்டிஷன்ல பாத்தீங்கன்னா it is supported by China, once it was supported by USA. So நீங்க வந்து again the voting and the decision of the international institution itself is influenced by whoever is powerful in the world. Okay, for instance USA or USSR or for now China. Okay, so the global institutions themselves have deteriorated. Okay, they don't have the capacity to be unbiased as they did once upon a time. Okay, so it was not the mistake of Nehru to have a faith in the multilateral institution then, but now, even now India still believes in, we say this thing, India believes in a rule based world or world order. What does it mean? We respect international organizations, okay, and whatever verdicts that they give. For instance, the South China Sea dispute. What happened? The Hague gave a judgment saying China should not illegally take some territory in the South China Sea. Okay, but China said no, we are not listening to their decisions. Okay, so there are some countries which turn a deaf ear towards the multilateral institutions. Okay, they don't want to respect those. Okay, but we believe in a rule based order. That is, we adhere to the rules. Okay, once we say that we adhere to some convention or some rule or some organization, we keep up the word. Okay, but it's not the case with most of the countries in the world. Okay, but so we can see that continuity even now. We are still bound and we are still, explaining to them all of our decisions. For instance, there are sometimes, world organizations which condemn our Kashmir move. Recently, the scrapping of Article 370 and in our ties with India, Pakistan. Naraya world countries and our multilateral institutions do criticize these efforts. Okay, but India still does not disrespect those organizations. We give an explanation. Okay, saying it is a sovereign issue of our country. Okay, it's an internal issue of our country where we have all capacity to deal with it. Okay, so there and another country is not supposed to intervene. right? So we are the ones who will decide our internal issues. That is why we are a sovereign country, right? So that is what, we still have, and we still respect the international organizations and multilateral institutions. Yes. Yeah. So Nehru's emphasis on low military expenditure. Okay, so he did not. We saw that he has advocated nuclear disarmament, which means he was not for arms and ammunitions. He was, in a way, having or promoting kind of non-violence. He never thought or would want a war with another country. Was a kind of person he was, and that was a foreign policy then. Okay, but when 1962 war broke out, or the aggression broke out between India and China, it was felt that Nehru assumed, or kind of underestimated the capacity or the kind of threat that could come from China, right? So he was the person who kind of did not pay enough emphasis on military expenditures. Okay, and there are also reasons. Okay, it's so easy to blame Nehru. However, the point is that he had, um, you know economic issues to deal with. Okay, completely fed up with the famine condition then. Okay, our agricultural income was very, very low. There was a huge inequality, okay, between people. There were very few capitalists, so the state had to take care of every person. And when the state has a lot to take care of, okay, when the state has a lot to take care of, okay, India, the government had a lot to take care of. Okay, it had to take care of health, education of people, their income, and everything. How is it possible to, deal with military and give more emphasis on military? Okay, and this defense expenditure criticism has always been a criticism on India, because India has one country which, despite of having lot of threats on its northern side, in terms of Pakistan or China, it still had a relatively lesser defense spending than most countries have. Okay, so China invests so much. Okay, but it is a consistent investment. Okay, once upon a time there were times when China's navy or submarines would be mocked by the international community. Okay, US used to make fun of Chinese products, because like their Chinese products quality, even their submarines used to make a lot of noise, and there would be no more stealth submarines. So stealth submarines really mean that, you cannot find them out easily, right? So அந்த மாதிரியான கெப்பாசிட்டியே வந்து இல்ல சைனீஸ் ஸ்டெல்த் சப்மரைன்ஸ்க்கு அப்படின்னு சொல்லி கிண்டல் பண்ண காலங்கள்லாம் இருந்தது. Okay, but however China grew up. Okay, China changed itself. Okay, it became a technologically cheaper technologies ஓட place இருந்ததுல இருந்து they have moved a lot. Okay, in terms of military also they have made considerable advances. Okay, strategic நிறைய வந்து அவங்க வந்து பிளேசஸை வந்து பில்ட் பண்ணி நேவல் பேசஸ் அண்ட் ஆர்மி பேசஸ் பில்ட் பண்றது மூலிமா அவங்களோட ஸ்பியர் ஆஃப் இன்ஃப்ளூயன்ஸை அதிகம் பண்ணிட்டே வராங்க, which means their expenditure on military is high. However, in India you can see that the defense expenditure is very less. And இப்போ வந்து you can see a good nudge after NDA came into power. We can see that formerly Nirmala Sitaraman, or when Rajnath Singh was there, or whoever was a minister in the past and who is now, they are giving enough attention towards defense procurements. Okay, so they have a separate defense procurement policy which talks about how much of machines should be procured, how much of things should be procured. There are scams and things like that, and whatever coming up. But however, it's not to be denied that this government pays a lot of emphasis on military expenditure and defense procurements. Yes. Yeah. So, and Nehru was called an idealist. If you see in the previous slide, okay, it's here. Okay, Nehru was called an idealist. So we will conclude our class today with by talking about idealism and realism. So what exactly is idealism? Idealism abdina is in the foreign policy context, holds that a nation state should make its internal political philosophy the goal of its conduct and rhetoric in international affairs. For example, an idealist might believe that ending poverty at home should be coupled with tackling poverty abroad. Okay, in general, idealism or being idealistic அப்படின்னா என்ன அர்த்தம் அப்படின்னா, you have an ideal for which, or to achieve, is achieve that particular ideal, you go, and it is like almost utopian. Okay, by saying utopian, அது ஒரு far reaching goal ஆ இருக்கும். அது immediate achieve பண்ண முடியாது. Okay, but you will be progressing towards that. Okay, and you are driven by principles. ஓகே, நான் வந்து பாவர்ட்டிக்கு எதிராக போராட போறேன், அல்லது நான் இதுக்காக போராட போறேன், அதுக்காக போராட போறேன் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி they will have some ideals and principles, and they will be very strong when it comes to following that. Okay, so they would for instance, இப்போ பாவர்ட்டி ஒழிக்கிறதுங்கிறது இப்போதைக்கு நடக்கிறது இல்லை, இட்ஸ் a long term goal, but still they will be closely keeping with that goal. Okay, so they'll, when you mean idealistic, they are not driven by the current changes. இன்னைக்கு என்ன சினாரியோ அப்படிங்கறத விட அவங்க வந்து அந்த பிரின்சிபல் ட்ரிவனா தான் இருப்பாங்க. Okay, so more principle oriented and not making immediate choices. It's any choice will be based on principle. Okay, their conduct, their way of conducting international affairs itself, diplomacy itself will be dependent on some ideals, and they will stick to those principles, adhere to that principle strongly. Okay, so அதை நோக்கியே போயிட்டு இருப்பாங்க. ஓகே, இதுக்கு ஸ்ட்ரைட் ஆப்போசிட் என்ன அப்படின்னா ரியலிசம். ஓகே, தே ஆர் நாட் predominantly taken up by ideals. ஓகே, இவங்க எப்படின்னா ரியல் வேர்ல்ட்ல இருக்கிற பிரச்சனைக்கு தகுந்த மாதிரி டிசைட் பண்ணுவாங்க. Okay, so states become the central actors. For example, India becomes an important actor. Okay, so what they do is their self interest matters the most. ஓகே, இங்க வந்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா செல்ஃப் இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட்டுக்கெல்லாம் இடமே கிடையாது. இந்தியாவோட நேஷனல் இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் அப்படிங்கிற ரேஷனல் செல்ஃப் இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் அப்படிங்கறத பத்தியோ பவரை பத்தியோ அதிகமா ஐடியலிசம் பேசாது. ஓகே, பட் ரியலிஸ்டிக் அப்படின்னா இப்போ இந்தியா வந்து சைனா கூட போராடணும் அப்படின்னா, சைனாவை ஃபைட் பண்ணும் அப்படின்னா, தட்ஸ் மோர் பிராக்மேட்டிக்கா ரியலிஸ்டிக்கா என்ன பண்ணணுங்கிறத நம்ம இப்போ கிரவுண்ட்ல திங்க் பண்ணோம். ஐடியலிஸ்டிக்கா திங்க் பண்ணோம்னா நம்ம என்ன சொல்லுவோம், இல்ல இல்ல நம்ம பீஸ் கீப்பிங் கண்ட்ரி, சைனா எவ்வளோ தூரம் உள்ள வந்தாலும் நம்ம இன்னும் நெகோஷியேட் பண்ணிட்டே தான் இருக்கணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவோம். பட் அதுவே நம்ம இன்னும் கொஞ்சம் ரியலிஸ்டா திங்க் பண்ணோம்னா என்ன திங்க் பண்ணுவோம், நோ நோ வி நீட் டு ஸ்டாப் தெம். Yes, we need to stop them by using what means different, but we will take more pragmatic decisions. Okay, that is what realism is all about. Okay, it's not really goal oriented per se. We keep the national interest and power above all. Okay, that is a realist kind of a thing. Okay, so idealism is more about principle and achieving higher goals and novel goals and sticking closely to those things, whereas when it comes to radical I mean sorry realism, it's about pursuing the country's self interest, as well as creating a scenario where you work on ground. Okay, real, a day to day kind of a thing. Okay, and it's more driven by power. Okay, realism is for more of power. We'll explain on and explore this in further. Okay, regarding Bonapartism, I'll explain further. Okay, when we talk about 1950s in detail, I'll tell you. Okay, so in next class we will continue with all this. Yes, thank you guys. Have a good day.